You never really notice when a place starts to feel like a cage. At first, it's just walls, pipes, and paint, a place to crash after long days. But over time, when someone keeps tightening their control over every inch of your life, it stops feeling like shelter. It starts to feel like a trap you pay rent for. That's what my apartment became. And that's what my landlord, Tom, made sure of. When I first met him, he looked like every small-town property owner you've ever seen. Late 50s. Thinning gray hair slicked back with too much gel, a cheap gold chain hanging around his sun-spotted neck, and a smile that tried too hard. "Place ain't perfect," he'd said during my first walkthrough, "but it's solid. You take care of it, it'll take care of you." That line stuck with me. You take care of it, it'll take care of you. I didn't realize then he wasn't talking about the apartment. He was talking about himself. The building was old, a 2-story relic on the edge of town that leaned ever so slightly, like it was tired of standing. The hallways smelled faintly of mildew and paint thinner. Pipes rattled whenever someone turned on a tap. But the rent was cheap, and that mattered more than comfort. Back then, I wasn't making much. A job in retail, a car payment, student loans breathing down my neck. I needed a place, not a palace. The first month went fine. Quiet neighbors, a small porch where I could drink my coffee, and a landlord who mostly stayed out of sight. Then, slowly, things changed. It started with my dryer. I came home one evening, arms full of laundry, opened the shared laundry room door, and froze. The corner where my dryer sat was empty, just a square of dust where it used to be. I stood there for a full minute, trying to make sense of it. Maybe someone moved it? Maybe Tom had sent a repair guy? I called him immediately. He answered on the third ring, his tone already irritated. "Yeah. Hey, Tom, my dryer's missing." "I think maybe." "Missing?" He laughed. "You mean stolen?" "I guess. I don't know, but it's gone." There was a pause. Then, "You sure you didn't just sell it or something? You people are always moving stuff around down there." That hit me wrong. I bit my tongue. "No, I didn't sell it. It was mine. I paid for it." He sighed heavily, like I was wasting his time. "Well, it's a shared area. Not my problem if you can't keep track of your things." Then, click. Call ended. That's when I learned the first rule of renting from Tom. Everything that's yours is actually his. If he decides it is. After that, things started disappearing. A box of cleaning supplies. A toolbox. Even a cheap broom I kept in the hallway. When I confronted him again, he acted offended. "You think I need your broom? Jesus, maybe rats took it." Every word out of his mouth dripped with mockery. I started locking everything inside my unit. But it wasn't just a theft. It was the games. A few months later, a pipe burst under the sink. Old plumbing, corroded, just gave out. I called him right away. "You broke it?" "No, it just cracked." The plumber said its age. "Wear and tear." "Then you pay him." "I'm sorry, what?" "If it's not my fault, it's not my bill." I was stunned. "But you're the landlord. And you're the tenant who broke it. You pay or I'll add it to rent." I was broke that month, barely scraping by. So I did it. I paid for repair myself. It cost nearly half my paycheck. And because of that, my rent was 2 days late. 2. He slid a notice under my door in bright red letters. Failure to pay on time will result in termination of lease. I stared at that paper until my hands shook. I'd never missed rent in my life. Never even been late. That's when I realized Tom wasn't just a bad landlord. He was a bully. And like all bullies, he got off on control. That year, everything started falling apart. The porch outside my door began to sag. The wood soft and splintered. I reported it 4 times. He patched it with plywood. The heater was ancient, a gas unit that made the whole apartment smell faintly of fumes. The ceiling paint started to bubble, then flake, then peel off in chunks the size of my palm. I texted him photos. He never replied. Sometimes he'd just show up, no notice, let himself in to inspect something. I'd come home to find muddy footprints across the kitchen floor, or the blinds slightly open, like someone had been peering out. When I confronted him once, he smirked. "It's my property. I can enter whenever I need." "No, you can't," I said, my voice shaking. "You have to give notice." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You keep mouthing off, I'll find a reason to evict you." That night, I pushed my dresser against the door before going to bed. And that's how it went. Month after month of walking on eggshells, paying rent for a place that felt more like a prison, wondering what new game he'd play next. The final straw came one cold morning. I woke up to a letter taped to my door, bold, angry handwriting. "You're using my parking spot. Next time, I have your car towed and add a $150 fee to your rent." I parked in the same spot I'd always used. He just decided it was his now. I called him, trying to stay calm. "Tom, I've parked there for 3 years. Lease says I can assign spaces anytime I want." "That's not in the lease." "You calling me a liar?" "I'm saying I'm not paying you an extra $150 for a space I've always had." He hung up. 2 days later, I got another letter. This one was from his lawyer. A demand for payment. $150 per month for parking. Retroactive for the last 6 months. That's when I finally snapped. I found a tenant rights lawyer. We went over the lease line by line, and sure enough, Tom was bluffing. Completely illegal. When he realized I'd lawyered up, he went ballistic. Late night calls. Notes on my door saying, "Lawyers can't protect you from eviction." He even started hammering on my door at random hours, shouting that I was stealing his money. I stopped sleeping through the night. Every sound outside made me jump. It was pure harassment. And then, after 3 years of living like that, the letter came, rent increase notice. He was raising it by $500 a month. I remember reading it in silence, the paper trembling in my hands. No explanation, no reason, just a number that would price me right out. I could almost hear him laughing when I read the line. "If you cannot comply with this adjustment, you may vacate within 30 days. He wanted me gone. That was clear. But for the first time in years, something inside me didn't break. It hardened, because I was leaving anyway. But I wasn't leaving quietly. The last 30 days in that apartment felt like a countdown. Every morning, I woke up to that letter, taped above my kitchen sink, reminded me I had less than a month before Tom could legally kick me out. I didn't take it down. I wanted to see it every day. It became fuel. The mornings were cold then, early spring, the kind where sunlight looks warm but the air still bites your lungs. The radiator made its usual clanking noises, struggling to keep up. I'd sit at my table, drinking cheap coffee, scrolling through listings for new apartments I couldn't afford. Everything around me was breaking. The bathroom tiles were cracking. The kitchen faucet dripped constantly, and every step on the old floorboard sounded like a complaint. Tom had stopped answering texts completely. He didn't have to. He'd already won, or at least he thought he had. The tenants downstairs, a quiet couple in their 50s named Marcia and Ray, knocked on my door one night. They looked worn out. Same haunted look I'd started seeing in the mirror. Marcia held up her phone. "He just turned off our water again." I sighed. "You pay on time?" She nodded. "Every month. He says it's a maintenance issue." "It's not. He does this every time we ask for repairs." Ray added, "I'm filing a complaint with the county housing department. He can't keep doing this." That's when I realized something. It wasn't just me. Tom had a pattern. Every tenant he had was just another power trip. Marcia said something that stuck with me. "You can't reason with a man like that. You have to go above him." Above him? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that phrase echo in my head. I didn't know what above meant yet, but I was going to find out. A week later, I decided to start documenting everything. Every leak, every broken fixture, every late-night visit, photos, timestamps, even audio recordings of his rants through the door. At first, it was just a way to stay sane, to convince myself this wasn't all in my head. But soon, it became something else. Evidence. That word had power. Evidence meant I could prove what he'd done. Evidence meant I could finally fight back. Then came the night he crossed a line. It was 11:47 p.m. I remember the time exactly because I was sitting on the floor beside my mattress, editing a video for work. I'd taken some freelance gigs to save up the move. The room was quiet except for the hum of my old laptop fan. Then, a loud bang on the front door. I froze. 3 more bangs followed, harder this time. "Open up." "Tom." His voice was slurred. "Drunk? Maybe." I didn't move. He banged again, shouting, "You think you can threaten me with lawyers? You're done here." I grabbed my phone, hit record, and stayed silent. He kept pounding, swearing, until I finally heard his footsteps stumbling away. I stayed awake until dawn, shaking. The next morning, I sent a recording to my lawyer. He called me an hour later. "He can't do that. That's harassment. We can file for a restraining order." Something inside me shifted. For the first time, Tom had crossed from intimidation to criminal behavior, and I had proof. That was when my revenge truly began, not as rage, but as strategy. I spent the next week researching everything I could about landlord-tenant law in my state. Turns out, Tom had broken at least 7 different housing codes. Illegal entry without notice, failure to maintain basic living conditions, retaliatory rent increase, harassment, unsafe gas heating, unregistered rental property, failure to provide notice before termination. Every single one was a finable offense, and if reported to the city's Housing Compliance Board, those fines could add up fast. 100 per day per violation. It wasn't enough to make him uncomfortable. I wanted to make him pay, legally, publicly, and permanently. Marcia and Ray joined me. We compared notes, photos, and emails. Between the 3 of us, we had over 100 pages of proof, including a video of Tom yelling at Ray in the parking lot and threatening to shut the water off again if they didn't stop complaining. We filed a joint complaint with the housing authority, attaching everything. The woman at the counter took one look at our folder and said, "You did the right thing. He's been on our radar for a while." That sentence was better than any apology I'd ever get from him. While the investigation started, Tom had no idea what was coming. He thought I'd already given up. When he saw me loading boxes into my car, he smirked. "Finally getting out, huh?" I kept my voice even. "Yeah, guess I've had enough." He chuckled. "Told you it wouldn't work out. Not everyone's cut out for responsibility." I wanted to laugh in his face, but I didn't. I just nodded. "You're right, Tom. Some people aren't." He had no idea that by that point, he was being audited for every single property he owned. It took about a month before I heard back. I was living in a new apartment across town when I got the call. "This is the county housing department." The voice said, "We just want to inform you that your landlord has been found in violation of multiple safety and compliance laws." "How bad?" I asked. "Bad enough that he's looking at $500 per day in fines per violation." I sat there in silence, gripping the phone. "He's also under investigation for tax fraud. Someone reported unregistered rental income. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" I smiled. "Can't say I do." That same week, Tom tried calling me 3 times in one day. I didn't answer. Then came a text. "You think you can ruin me? You'll regret this." I forwarded it straight to the investigator. They added it to the harassment file. By the time it was over, Tom owed over $60,000 in fines. 2 of his properties were condemned for unsafe living conditions. The tenants were relocated, and his name ended up in the local paper. Landlord charged with housing violations and fraud. Marcia and Ray called me when they saw it. "He's done," Ray said. "Completely done." I laughed, not out of joy but relief. For 3 years, that man had made my life miserable. He'd stolen from me, threatened me, broken the law, and treated people like trash. And now, every single day he woke up, he was paying for it. Literally. Sometimes revenge isn't about fire and fury. Sometimes it's about patience, about watching a man dig his own grave, while you make sure the paperwork is filed properly. The first time I saw Tom after the fines hit, it wasn't in person. It was on the front page of the local news site, tucked between 2 unrelated articles. Landlord facing multiple charges for unsafe living conditions. The photo they used was an old one, probably pulled from a business permit, but you could tell he hadn't aged well. His hairline had receded further, his face puffier, like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. I almost didn't click on it. Almost. The article listed every property he owned, each one flagged for violations: illegal plumbing, lack of heat, unsafe balconies, unregistered rental permits. And buried halfway down was a quote from the county inspector. This landlord has repeatedly ignored warnings and tenant complaints. The department will pursue every legal option to ensure compliance and accountability. I must have read that line 20 times. Accountability. A word Tom had never understood. The next day, I stopped by the old neighborhood to pick up the last of my mail. The building looked worse than I remembered. Porch half torn down, paint peeling off, one of the upstairs windows boarded up. Marcia was outside, sweeping near her steps. She looked lighter somehow, like the tension had finally left her shoulders. When she saw me, she grinned. "You heard?" I nodded. Couldn't miss it. She leaned on her broom. "He's been here all week, arguing with inspectors. Tried to say we caused the damage." I laughed. "Of course he did." Then she said quietly, "You started this, didn't you?" I paused. "We all did." She smiled. "Well, thank you. You made a lot of people's lives better." That hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so long angry, so long focused on getting even, that I hadn't realized how many others were suffering in silence too. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. But Tom wasn't done yet. 2 days later, I got a letter, an official-looking envelope with his name scrawled in blue ink across the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You don't know who you're dealing with. This isn't over." No signature, just that line. I stared at it for a while, then took a photo and sent it to my lawyer. He replied instantly, "Keep it. This counts as harassment. He's digging his own hole." And dig he did. Within a week, the fines doubled because he'd ignored repair orders. The city issued a stop rent order, meaning he couldn't legally collect rent until everything was up to code. That was a real kill shot. For a landlord like Tom, rent was oxygen. Without it, he suffocated. I learned later, through Marcia, that tenants began withholding payments after they got official notices from the city. Some moved out entirely. Others demanded refunds. Tom started showing up at the property at random hours, yelling at whoever answered the door, trying to intimidate them into paying anyway. One of them recorded him on their phone, storming up the steps, shouting, "You think the city can stop me? You'll all regret this." That video went viral in our local Facebook group. By that evening, it had 1,000 comments. People started sharing their own stories. Turns out Tom had been pulling the same scams across 3 different neighborhoods, charging maintenance fees that never went to repairs, falsifying receipts, threatening legal action against anyone who questioned him. And now, his entire operation was unraveling in public view. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from the housing inspector who'd handled my complaint. "Just wanted to let you know, Mr. Harris has officially lost his rental license pending appeal. Thank you for coming forward. Tenants like you make our job possible." I played that message twice. Then a third time. I wanted to hear it sink in. Lost his license. That meant he couldn't legally rent to anyone. Not in this city. Not in the surrounding counties. 3 years of control, manipulation, and fear gone with one sentence. But karma wasn't finished yet. A month after that, the police followed up on the breaking and entering case from when he nailed my door shut. I'd nearly forgotten about it, but apparently they hadn't. The officer on the phone told me he's being charged with a felony. He tried to deny it, but we've got the report and photos from that day. The DA's office wants to move forward. I asked what that meant in plain terms. It means he might actually serve time. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, quiet, steady, letting it wash over me. Justice. Slow. Methodical. Inevitable. The final blow came from somewhere I didn't expect. The IRS. Remember that part about unregistered rental income? Turns out the county shared their findings with the state. The state shared them with the feds. Tax evasion. It wasn't massive, but enough to trigger an audit. Tom's life became a spiral of fines, legal fees, and sleepless nights. The last I ever heard of him, he'd sold off 2 of his properties at a loss and moved to another state. No one knew where exactly. No one really cared. I visited the old building one last time that summer. The new owner had already started renovations. The porch was rebuilt, sturdy this time. The gas lines replaced. The paint fresh and white. It didn't even smell the same. No mold, no decay, just new beginnings. Marcia and Ray waved from their window. They looked happy. Safe. That was enough for me. Driving home that day, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. 3 years of being made to feel small. 3 years of being told I was powerless. But power isn't loud. It doesn't need to yell or threaten. Sometimes it just waits, silent, patient, until the truth comes knocking. And when it does, there's nowhere left to hide. End of part 3. Next comes part 4, the aftermath and reflection. This is where we slow down the pacing, pull listeners into the emotional release, the quiet aftermath after revenge, the self-awareness, and that heavy, satisfying final note that lingers after the video fades. Would you like me to continue with part 4, 2,000 plus words? Now, the closing and reflection section that rounds out to a full 7,000 word, 40-minute story? The silence after storm always feels wrong at first. For 3 years, every creak in that house made me jump. Every car door outside made me look through the blinds. And then, suddenly, nothing. No slamming footsteps outside my door. No voicemails demanding more rent. No cold, smug voice reminding me who owned the building. Just quiet. And it took me a while to trust it. When I first moved into my new apartment, a small, second-floor walk-up on the other side of town, I couldn't even sleep the first week. Every sound made me tense up, half expecting to hear the rattle of Tom's old truck pulling in, or the metallic scrape of a key in a lock that shouldn't turn. That's the part people don't talk about after revenge. The aftershock. You spend so long surviving that when you finally win, your body doesn't know what to do with the calm. I kept checking the locks, kept glancing over my shoulder, even caught myself pausing before lighting a candle, remembering how the smell of gas used to hang heavy in that old place. It took time to unlearn fear. About 2 months after I left, I got another call from the housing inspector, the same one I'd spoken to before I left. He said, "Just wanted to let you know, that property's been officially condemned until further notice. Unsafe structure. No one's allowed to live there until it's rebuilt from the ground up." Condemned. That word hit me in the chest. For years, I've been the one feeling condemned, trapped under a landlord who saw tenants as disposable. Now it was the building that couldn't stand under the weight of his neglect. Poetic in a dark kind of way. I thanked the inspector and hung up. Then I just sat there for a while, staring out the window, letting the thought sink in. It's finally over. That weekend, I drove out past the river, took the long road that cuts through the forest, just to clear my head. The air smelled cleaner out there, cold and sharp. I parked near a clearing, got out, and stood in the quiet. No horns, no pipes, no footsteps above me. Just wind, trees, and space. It felt strange to breathe without the weight of that place sitting on my chest. For 3 years, I'd woken up dreading the next argument, the next letter, the next petty act of cruelty. Now there was nothing left to dread. That emptiness wasn't sadness. It was freedom wearing an unfamiliar face. A few weeks later, I ran into one of the old tenants, a guy named Ray who used to live in the basement unit. He recognized me instantly, even though I'd shaved and looked about 10 pounds lighter from the stress finally leaving my body. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Hey, man, you here? They're tearing the old place down next month." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" "Yep. Guess the new owner says it's cheaper to rebuild and fix all the crap Tom ignored. Place was a death trap. Man, you did us all a favor." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled, nodded. He went on, "You know what's funny? People used to say you were crazy for standing up to him. But now," he gestured vaguely in the air, "everyone knows what kind of guy he was." That hit harder than I expected, because for the longest time, I'd wondered if maybe I was crazy, if I'd overreacted, if the late-night calls to police or the building complaints made me look paranoid. Turns out I was just the first one to stop pretending everything was fine. One night, not long after, I found myself scrolling through the local Facebook page again. The same one where Tom's outburst had gone viral months earlier. Someone had posted an update. Does anyone know what happened to that landlord, Tom Harris? Haven't seen him around since the charges. The comments filled up fast. He's gone bankrupt. He moved out of state. Heard he's trying to start over somewhere else. Then one comment stood out. Doesn't matter where he goes. His name's public record now. People remember. I smiled at that one, not out of spite, but because it was true. He couldn't hide from what he'd built anymore. That kind of reputation follows you, the same way his shadow used to follow me down those dark hallways. Months passed. Life got normal again. I started working more hours, met new neighbors, planted herbs on my windowsill. Simple things, but they felt like small victories. Every now and then, though, I'd think back to the old apartment. The sagging porch, the flickering heater, the sound of Tom's boots stomping up the stairs. And I'd feel that faint prickle of memory. Not fear exactly, but the echo of it. It reminded me how far I'd come. Because the truth is, revenge didn't give me peace. Justice did. Revenge was just a door I had to kick open to reach it. I'll never forget the last phone call I had about Tom. It was my lawyer again months later, just doing a courtesy follow-up. He said, "You probably don't care anymore, but the DA's office finalized case. He pled down to a misdemeanor, got fined, and lost his rental privileges statewide." I asked, "No jail time?" He sighed. "No, but between the fines, the lawsuits, and the tax stuff, he's finished." "Good enough," I said. And it was. Because what I wanted wasn't for him to rot in a cell. It was for him to finally face consequences. To feel what it's like when the system he exploited finally turns around and looks him dead in the eye. That night, I sat on my porch, my own porch, safe and legal, sipping a beer as the sun went down. I thought about those 3 years. The stolen dryer, the illegal plumbing, the fear that someone might come through my door uninvited. And then I thought about the inspector's visit, the fines, the police report, the felony. Every step had cost me something: time, sleep, sanity. But it had led here, to this quiet evening, this peace that felt real for the first time in years. I realized something sitting there. Some people only learn through loss. You can beg, explain, argue, but until their power is stripped away, they'll never understand what they've done. Tom's loss wasn't just his money or his license. It was control. He couldn't bully, threaten, or manipulate his way out of this one. The law, the very thing he used to twist against us, became the weapon that took him down. And that's a kind of justice I wouldn't trade for anything. Sometimes I drive past the old lot on my way to work. The building's gone now, just gravel and a sign that says, "Coming soon, new residences." Every time I see it, I remember that final day, standing there, watching the police explain the law to him while he sputtered and fumed, realizing the game was over. It's not joy I feel when I think about it. It's closure, like an old scar. It doesn't hurt anymore, but it reminds you what survival costs. I know this much. If I ever meet another landlord like him, I won't stay quiet again. And maybe that's the real revenge. Learning that you can fight back, that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because someone holds the keys. Because now I hold my own, and I sleep easy knowing that somewhere out there, Tom's still trying to understand where it all went wrong. And realizing the answer is simple. He messed with the wrong tenant.